Hi guys, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we will look at a scenario in which the USA invades South America. Right now, we're 194 subscribers away from our goal at the end of August. So if you could, please subscribe so we can get our goal. And now let's... Oh wait, I forgot coloring South America. The US is preparing its amphibious landing, either in Venezuela or Colombia. They're not sure yet, but they're probably going to be allies, maybe. Who knows? Fine, there's probably not going to be many allies, but a few maybe. As Mexico supporting, I guess, them. Not joining the war, but kind of. Probably supporting South America. And then we all know that Canada is, of course, supporting them. The US, because Canada never doesn't support the US. But the US is trying to find disloyalty in South America. I'd say most of the US enemies would support the opposite color, but right away Canada joins them with support. So does the UK, France. Instantly. They give support too. And instantaneously, Australia gives support. But just to let you know, the war won't expand out of North America. These are just support at this time. There probably won't be more support. I think this is what I'm going to do for support. Do America's enemies against America and Latin America probably. North Korea joins against Japan, and South Korea just stay neutral, as they just don't care enough. These are nations that have said one side is right or another. Doesn't mean one side's right or wrong. They just openly say that the side they're supporting is right. Despite the fact it might not be, who knows. And this is how support ends up laying down. Now let's go into the real fighting. But the disloyalty they're trying to find is hard, but they think they found it. So they fund money into some corrupt politicians that will switch sides. But they're making a landing in Venezuela. And Colombia gets invaded. As the allies may or may not be supporting land invasions. I'm only picking like major supporters probably. I'd say all of NATO supports the US. Finally, Poland decides, and Ukraine decides to support the West. Why would they choose so late? Who knows? Most of the bigger nations pick a side, but the smaller ones just don't because they can't. They pick a side, but they don't aid the side, if that makes sense. But they still pick a side. And the side they all picked, most of Europe picked America, and then I'm just showing some of the main supporters. But the US invasion has gone off to a great start. But then South America makes a counter-offensive. Even getting up to there. Splitting America into two invasions. But this is when America invades French Guiana. Yeah, Guyana got independence. Definitely not invading France, or there might be some problems. And then they push back. Now they found that Paraguay is thinking of maybe joining the US side, as Paraguay wants revenge for being invaded by its neighbors. With Brazil making a humongous counteroffensive, pushing the US into northern French Guiana. But Paraguay is preparing for what it's going to do. The US Pacific Navy is arriving, and they land in Ecuador and take Ecuador's capital. With Colombia deciding to make as big of a counteroffensive as they can make with the support of Peru and Brazil. But really, they only get to there. And then this advance opens right up into Brazil. And yeah. This counteroffensive in Venezuela moves south in Venezuela. Guyana collapses, and so is their name. And well, the invasion opens up like that. But this is about when Paraguay switches sides. And while everybody's shocked, no, that's not the right color I meant to use. I was going to use green because I thought it looked cool in my head. And then they invade into Argentina with American weapons. This explains why they weren't supporting much. And everybody's focused on the US invasion, with it expanding well. And yeah. As they move some forces to deal with Paraguay, it leads to this humongous push as they are moving troops away from the border. And they're retreating as Ecuador manages to collapse. And Venezuela, and so is Colombia. With America slowly going into the jungle before deciding, yeah, we don't need to. And they go into the jungle successfully because they learned a few things. And as this happens, the Paraguayan counteroffensive goes ahead full steam. And northern Paraguay is invaded by the Allies. Not the Allies, the South Americans. And it's done successfully to a point where half of Paraguay falls back under the control of South America's team. But Paraguay holds the rest without being pushed back, as they're now moving troops to the north to attempt a counteroffensive. But oddly, it doesn't go so well. They get to here, but they can barely move, which is confusing everyone. Because they have troops to hold Paraguay back is what the problem is, which is creating huge problems. Paraguay is allowing the Americans to push far into their enemies. Well, actually, they're not their enemies. They're just at war somehow. With America having huge success. But their front starts to stall out a bit. Brazil can't hold them back. Brazil may be the strong nations, but all that remains is a stronger South American nations, which might mean a stalemate will happen at the end of the video. But Paraguay gets more American stuff, and they move across, cutting Brazil and Argentina off. Which is a big deal, but there's nothing they can do as they're trying to hold the Americans back, which makes a mess. As they spearhead down to Lima. They encircle Lima and take the city. And quickly Peru surrenders. With America starting to focus more troops to Brazil. Paraguay has sent more weapons, which they use to launch a counteroffensive in the north, which Brazil can't hold back somehow. With America not wanting to invade Chile because that's a big, hard idea. With the Brazil front just stopping. Even though Paraguay is in it, they're failing to push back. Paraguay to sign peace is their best idea after Bolivia just collapses. So they go to peace. But there's one thing that happens first. Brazil makes a slight counteroffensive against Paraguay in the north and south. But to no avail it goes. So they decide peace with America and Paraguay is a good idea. Paraguay has become strong with the help of the United States. And, well, before this did happen, the treaty, there was a bit more fighting before they reached the treaty. Before every nation had agreed, which is Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. Uruguay has finally agreed, which ends the war in a ceasefire, and now for the treaty. Its first ever war, and America being victorious. Gain some land, they make a puppet of Guianas, they make a puppet of Gran Colombia, and they make a puppet of Peru or Bolivia. And then they have an ally, Paraguay now. And Brazil is split in two, which they're kind of upset about, but there's nothing they can do. Because they were kind of invaded by the U.S. Like, yeah. Maybe if I was a few hundred years ago, they would have fared better when they first got independence. Or maybe they would have fared worse. Who knows? Well, that's pretty much all for today's video. Please like, subscribe, comment. Why should you subscribe? Our next subscriber special is at 750 subscribers, which is 144 away from that. Our other goal, we're 194 subscribers away, which is 800 by August 1st. So if you could, please subscribe. That would mean a lot for the channel. That's pretty much all for today's video. Wild Mapper out!